welcome. If you're joining us, I'm just going to give it a few seconds here as I see people entering the live room on Zoom. If you're watching this after the fact, thanks as well for joining us and sharing this with other people. I'm Catherine Lopez from the National Review Institute, and our Center for Religion, Culture, and Civil Society is sponsoring this event. I'm coming to you, by the way, from Greenwich Village, New York, in St. Joseph's Church. Earlier this week, the governor of New York said that we, the abortion capital of the world, will welcome pregnant women from Texas. So I thought it would be appropriate to make clear that there are people in New York who don't want women to have to flee here for abortions. We'd like them to be helped by people, neighbors in their states who want to help them, which is why I have here today Jeff Bradford, the president of Human Coalition, and Chelsea Yeoman, the national director of policy for the Human Coalition. They are on the front lines in Texas. They want to help women. They help women. And I thought it was really important for us to talk to them so other people can be aware of their work. And I really think people in places like New York need to be adopting pregnancy care centers and groups like the Human Coalition. So I think we need to rally for women like we never have before. This is an opportunity where the entire country, the entire world is looking at Texas. And so with that, Jeff, could you tell us a little bit about Human Coalition, how you got into this work, because you have a very unique voice, and really give us an introduction to the work that you're doing.
Well, Catherine, thank you for having us. We're honored to be with you today. Well, Human Coalition, I'll tell you a little bit how it got started, but it is one of the largest pro-life, pro-woman, and pro-family organizations in the country now. We started from a very humble beginnings with just 3 of us. Today, almost over a decade later, we now have about 180 employees across the country. Our mission is to make abortion unthinkable and unnecessary. And unthinkable is culture change. I mean, part of what we're doing, and as Chelsea's going to talk about some of the laws that we've been helping write and advocate and help get passed. Sometimes the law is prescriptive. Sometimes it follows culture. And so we realize that we have to be a part of that culture change in making abortion unthinkable, but also unnecessary. These women are in very difficult situations. And so at Human Coalition, we have programs and services that really come alongside that woman and help her with tangible needs. These women, housing, education, employment are some of the top needs for these women. And so even in a post-Roe culture, as we look at how do we help these women who are making very difficult decisions. And honestly, most women don't want to make a decision to kill their child. They know that this is a child in the womb. And in fact, Chelsea may mention this, but 76% of those women who are planning to abort, because that is the target market that we work with, women who have already made a decision to abort, and they're looking for services, they're looking to schedule appointments, they're looking for where they have the nearest abortion. Even those women, 76% would say that they would prefer to parent if their circumstances were different. So we can talk a little bit about that, but these women are in need. And so at Human Coalition, we coordinate with some of the best resources that are available in a city and a state. And through licensed professional social workers, we put together programs that help her. But at a broader level, our core, what we call our true north, is building a national rescue system. And the national rescue system is built to compete against Planned Parenthood, which is a $1.6 billion competitor. Now, we're still very small compared to Planned Parenthood, but we have the Lord on our side, and we are working to really unify and coalesce the life-affirming organizations around the country so that we can work more collaboratively, that we can be more intentional of how we come together, because people are doing great work across the country, but we're not always collaborating. We're not always putting that in a comprehensive solution. So we have our own brick and mortar physical clinics, women's care clinics. We have telecare, we have contact centers, and then we have the continuum of care, which is that quarterbacking of resources. For instance, Catherine, in Chicago, we're working in Chicago. A family asked us to come there last year. And so we market to women who are planning to abort, and then we work with the pregnancy centers in that area to bring them clients. And so we help them get them from a planning to abort into a more planning to carry, or more abortion, what we would call abortion vulnerable, and then share that client with those pregnancy centers. So it becomes a win-win. So that's part of our national rescue system. So you asked me how I came to this. It's something I thought I would never be doing. I sold my company. I owned a company for about 17 years. I sold that, and I was doing consulting work when the co-founders of Human Coalition, I met them through one of my consulting engagements. And one day they handed me their card and said, "Hey, we save babies using the internet and technology and business." Well, what they didn't know is that same week, my wife and I were in Christian counseling. We had helped start a church. I was a lay pastor. My wife was the worship leader, and the church split. We felt like we had just given ourselves away for so long doing other things that we had neglected our own marriage. And through that, I'll never forget, we closed the door to that office, and my wife began to cry uncontrollably. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's going on? Is our marriage in more shape than I thought, or is there something else underneath that? And that came down to a decision we made almost 30 years ago. We got engaged, and during that engagement, we got pregnant. And I went to family and got some very bad advice, and we ended up at Planned Parenthood. And we took the life of our daughter, and we didn't talk about it. We were too ashamed. We felt like that was the unforgivable sin. Our pastor didn't talk about it. We felt so ashamed. And I had only told one person that whole time. It was my best friend. And it wasn't really until that week that God really dropped the scales from my eyes to see what abortion really was from a Christian man and husband. And I never forget, Catherine, that I remember thinking, gosh, if we were blowing up NIC ICU units around the country, and 3,000 babies were being blown up from one NIC ICU to another, do you think as Christian men and women, we would be doing everything humanly possible to stop the next bomb? And I know that we would. And so that was really the awakening for me. But I appreciated the fact that this organization was combining science and data and technology and all the business acumen that we had into a cause. And so that's where how I got started. I ended up taking off 90 days and helping raise some money. By God's grace, we did that. Not exactly the way that we thought, but God did show up in some amazing ways. And so that was how I got here, and how Human Coalition was birthed now almost 11 years ago.
Wow, thanks be to God. And your testimony is so important, as you know. I don't have to tell you, Jeff, because so often people think that we're judging them, and if we're pro-life, if we're praying outside clinics, if we're offering sidewalk counsel, and people do believe it's the unforgivable sin, but there's no unforgivable sin, and God's mercy is for everyone, for the abortion doctor, for the men and women who have been involved in abortions, and that if we could only relay one message, I would like to relay that message, but I hope we can relay some other messages during the course of this too, and I think we are. Chelsea, can you introduce yourself a little bit, how you got into this work? And I should add that you were a National Review Institute regional fellow in Texas not all that long ago, Dallas not long ago. And I should also add that the National Review Institute will be in Dallas in October on the 21st, I believe. You can check the nrinstitute.org website for all the details. Chelsea.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. It's so refreshing to be here just among like-minded people, or people who are even maybe on the fence about this issue and want to hear more. But I am Chelsea Yeoman, and I am our National Director of Public Policy for Human Coalition. I did constitutional law before I came here. I was at First Liberty Institute doing religious liberty work and First Amendment free speech issues. And so I really felt that calling to join the pro-life movement. I always wanted my career to revolve around advocating for the voiceless. And so those who were oppressed in their civil rights through religious liberty issues, but the more and more I was drawn to just the vulnerable among us who are in the womb, and that's just such an undeniable population that is they're killed in the womb, and they can't speak for themselves. So I really wanted to translate that into working in this realm, and I was really grateful to come alongside Human Coalition, who was my client at First Liberty at the time. And I called them and said, I'm called to the pro-life movement. I'm going to join the pro-life movement. I want to do lobbying and public policy work there. And they said, do it through us. And so it was really a dream come true. We really saw God's hand in that, just completely paving the way. And through what I view just such a beautiful marrying of serving women. We serve the women seeking abortion and having abortion. We know who they are. We know what their needs are, and what a more holistic approach to eliminating abortion through the government side of things when you're representing women and their unborn children together. I mean, I have such a wealth of knowledge about her needs, what she's going through, what our clinics are telling us these drivers for the demand of abortion are. So why aren't we writing policies to that effect? And that's where I come in. So it's really such a blessing to get to be a part of, and I'm really hopeful for where our movement is. If you're even at all involved in the news, you know we've got Dobbs in front of the Supreme Court. The Texas Heartbeat Act is at bay. So we've got all of this happening at once. It's a really exciting and hopeful time to be a part of the pro-life movement.
And Chelsea, am I crazy to think that this moment is such an opportunity for pro-lifers to reach out to women, to reach out to people who are on the fence, as you mentioned, people who consider themselves pro-choice, to show them that we truly care for women and we care about the babies beyond the birth, and that the pro-life movement is about accompaniment for as long as they want. And how can we better articulate that? And also, if you would talk a little bit about the drivers, because I think that's something we can unite on too.
Yes, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I always say we're entitled to our own opinions, but not our own facts. So here are the facts if you want to be equipped to talk about this. There are 2,700 pregnancy resource centers out there. They outnumber abortion clinics 4-1, and in the state of Texas, it's 8-1. So that's significant that we are the movement serving women and serving women with better options and better solutions. And really, we send the message that you are capable, you are intelligent, you are able, and let's stabilize your circumstances so you can do so successfully. So that's one thing. I think the abortion industry sells the lies that women can't. They really patronize women. I can't stand the way abortion providers don't even talk about abortion on its real terms. I don't think they trust women to know what abortion really is. And so by just saying that we really do serve women, and that's what our entire movement is built on, is the first point. And then the second point, I think, is understanding who the abortion seeking woman is. She is not this woman, like they say, that's out there saying, I care about bodily autonomy, I'm a feminist, hear me roar. These are women who are homeless. Sometimes they can't feed the children they currently have. Childcare, the inability to afford childcare for a new child in the world, is one of the number one cited reasons women are seeking abortion. Unemployment, not being insured. I mean, these are tangible, basic needs that women have. They often feel coerced. The majority of women feel pressured into having an abortion by a partner, a parent, a friend. So they really don't feel like they're desperate, and they don't feel like they have other options. And so that's where groups like ours come alongside them and say, you have options, let's walk you through them. Here's some gynecological care. You're eligible for these types of programs, and making those connections for women where, otherwise they feel like one thing is coming up on their Google Drive, and that's abortion and Planned Parenthood.
Mm. Anyone who spends any time talking to women who are at abortion clinics, it's very rare, although sometimes you do encounter it in New York, the hardened person but there's so many layers beyond that of hurt, so often it's just complete desperation. Jeff, can you talk practically? So if you're a pregnant woman in Texas, how can you be helped?
Well, as Chelsea mentioned, I mean, we work with organizations all across Texas. I mean, hundreds and thousands that we have built relationships with. We actually have a database of resources. And so we provide licensed professional social workers to build a plan with that woman to help her from the situation that she feels like she has to have an abortion, and really understanding those needs, and then walking with her for as long as she wants to walk, to really help her from that dependent to independence. And so we are building a national database as well for those resources and help. What most women, they're just in a panic. They feel like that's their only choice, is that, if I can just get rid of the pregnancy, then the rest of my life will come into order. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. So if somebody can just help her slow down and breathe and really understand, why does she feel like she has to have an abortion? Well, as Chelsea mentioned, it is sometimes tangible needs. A lot of times it's also coercion from the father, from their parents or whomever, but a lot of times it's men. And so men need to step up and come and support a woman. I promise you this, my wife would have never had an abortion if I would have said, hey, we can do this. And so men need to step up in this as well, because sometimes we are less than who we should be. And I certainly wasn't. But these programs are out there. There are hundreds and thousands of nonprofits. It's just what we have seen to be most effective is us now connecting the dots for her and just helping her in this time to step in the gap for her and help her along. Pregnancy centers have done this for years. So there, as Chelsea mentioned, thousands of pregnancy centers that are ready and willing to help. So I see Texas really, stepping up to help women. And I think as a country, as pro-life, we've got to continue to do that even more. And so there are other strategies that we're putting together, because I think in a post-Roe world, what we call continuum of care, this help just coming along. And I think being the church, this is what the church should be. And so part of our strategy too is how do we engage the church to work in their backyards with these women and families. And to me, there's no better manifestation of the gospel than coming alongside someone in their time of need and helping them. And we have incredible stories of women who felt like they couldn't have a child, that choose life, that say, gosh, I can't believe I ever thought that. And we have one here recently she was homeless, now buying her house, and just incredible situations. Women are powerful, and we just need to empower them to do well.
There's a group whose name I now forget. They do like animated short videos for women, and there was one recently where the pregnant woman is a superhero. Like, you can do this. Yeah. And I feel like, and Chelsea, maybe you want to talk a little bit about this National Health Rescue Line you're talking about, the network. This is empowerment. This is freedom. It's, the pro-choice movement, unfortunately, uses this language, the abortion advocates, of freedom and choice and women's health. And it's actually the exact opposite. Abortion is the exact opposite of that. And as Jeff points out, as you pointed out, so many of these women feel like they have no other choice. And so it's just such a lie that it's a choice. Can you talk a little bit about how this is helping women? This is loving women.
Absolutely. I mean, society has changed so much since Roe versus Wade. This is not 1973. And things like sex discrimination in the workplace, or pregnancy discrimination, and paid maternity leave. I mean, our entire society is different than it was. Now, of course, abortion has never been justified, because abortion ends an innocent human life. But I think it's safe to say that women have a lot of options. They need to know what they are. And that's what truly empowering a woman to do. Like Jeff said earlier, 76% of our clients say they would prefer to parent. That's the real choice for them. Like, enable them and empower them to make the choice they really want to make. And of course, at the end of the day, we are hopeful that saves innocent human lives.
Absolutely.
Jeff, one thing that is really important that you talked about is this idea of men and what their responsibility is in this. One of the things I find both most heartbreaking and infuriating outside abortion clinics is you see boyfriends there, and they're acting like they're kind of like, I see them bonding, like, one guy's been here before, like, how long is it going to take? What do you do? and it's like they think that this is what a man does. This is what's expected. You go with your girlfriend for the abortion, and you don't, frequently the guy will say, well, she wants it, and so I'll support her, and but no, as you say, Jeff, if a man, if a boy knew that one word could change this situation, then it would make this situation all so different.
Yeah. Well, it's heartbreaking. I mean, and it is a perspective, the church, this is where, we have to continue to step up as Christians, as the church, and continue to speak into this. I think there is, because I think so many churches don't speak about this issue, and it is a sensitive issue, but we have to talk about it. We have to encourage men. We have to step up. And so this is a bigger, I'm sorry?
We have to tell the truth.
That's right. And so, so many churches are afraid they're going to offend someone, or that people are going to, they're going to send emails to the pastor. Well, the other side of that is, if you're not talking about it, of course, we have to talk about it in grace and love. But we heal. There is no sin bigger than the cross of Christ. And so we have to continue to talk about this and have young men understand the consequences and their responsibility. And so, I think we have to continue to inspire and encourage churches to really get involved more than they are today. And young men, I grew up in a Christian home, and I got advice through a Christian home, and still ended up at Planned Parenthood. And so, because this was not an issue that was talked about, and we have to do better. I know there's organizations that are doing that, but that's an area, that we'd like to see. We have men's, we are helping counsel the men. When the man is involved and comes into the center and is a part of that process, I don't remember the exact percentage, Chelsea, but it was like 70 or 80%. I mean, when a man hears that heartbeat, when a man gets that clinic and supports that woman, it's a vast, the life decision rate goes way up. And so men are an important part of this. And so we have to bring them into the conversation.
Yeah,
go ahead, Chelsea.
I would just add to what Jeff said, if I could. One of the things that's really shocked me in the last few weeks since the Texas Heartbeat Act was enacted, and I'm doing all of these interviews, is just the absolute refusal to acknowledge humanity in the womb on the other side. And I think anything we can do to draw the truth, what we know is God fearfully and wonderfully made us in that womb, and he has a plan for our lives and numbers our days and counts the hairs on our head. I mean, all of that is true of the humans in the womb. They're simply very small. And so anything we can do in the discussions with family members and our communities around us to build a culture of life, it must include the humanity of the child. I think that's really truth rising to the surface. I think that's the thing that I really hope continues to help us win this pro-life cause.
Well, and I feel like one of the greatest values of this legislation in Texas, which I know is controversial even among conservatives, if we could put that aside for a minute, it's the rhetorical value. So you're saying that a child with a heartbeat, that's right, can be killed. There is that educational aspect of it. I think most people don't appreciate when the heartbeat begins, and so I think most people look away and don't fully appreciate what science tells us, right?
Science.
And so when we have something like in the news, it is an opportunity to really look at what we're doing and what it is, and yes, what we can do better, and how we can support people who are trying to do better, who are doing better. Jeff, your point about churches, I think, is so essential. That's why I guess it's appropriate I'm in a church right now, because so often not only are we not talking about abortion, and mercifully by some miracle the pastor at St. Joseph's in Greenwich Village talks about these controversial issues, thanks be to God. But so frequently, we go to church on Sunday and we don't think about the community around us and the needs. And even more so, and this is what concerns me so much, do people know that their Christian parents, friends, cousins, etc., would be there for us, for them, if they were pregnant, if they found themselves pregnant. And I very often, I think people just think we're going to judge them. And I also worry that the people in the pews who are in the churches might not know where to send a young girl who's pregnant unexpectedly, unplanned pregnancy. Can you talk a little bit about how any initiatives you're aware of, or just your own personal encouragement to people who are listening, who are Christians, who are religious believers of some sort, who maybe vote pro-life, but maybe don't do much beyond that?
Well, it's a great point. And one I just want to say too, pastors today have so many things coming at them. They do an amazing job, and there are so many areas. I know they're pulled in so many directions. So, and yet as the pro-life movement, we want to elevate the moral priority of a child being killed in the womb over some of those. So part of this is, how do we continue to educate and activate the church? And there's so many people that come to us and say, gosh, we've been pro-life for so long, we don't know how to get involved. What do we do? And so that's an area I think that we got to get better at. I work with now for the last number of years, a lot of the pro-life leaders around the country. And I am so excited that we are uniting and that we are working together. There has been a lot in the past of really kind of territorialism and, just like any other. And so we're saying, hey, we have to get this done. And so we're looking at ways of, how do we onboard the church? How do we give people simple ways that they can get involved and say, hey, I can do that? Because people are so busy, right? I mean, they have families, they have work and all this. So how do we begin to just onboard people into the pro-life movement? So there's some things coming that we're really excited about, that we're working unified throughout the pro-life movement. So I would say, and then the other thing I would say, I think some churches have done it really well. I go to the Village Matt Chandler, and, they look at pro-life holistically. And I think churches should also look at that. It's not, it is a holistic approach. So it's adoption, it's foster care. There's lots of things that we can do, being a part of what we call continuum of care. So I just encourage people to reach out to their pregnancy centers, to Human Coalition, to their church, and say, how can we get involved? And I think we as the pro-life movement need to get a better job of through technology, allowing people to onboard and do things that sometimes are small things that make a big impact, and other people who want to get involved more, that we have things for them as well. But I think the Bible says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. I think it really does come down to making people more aware of what abortion is and what the consequences of this are, and how do we then pray, engage the church? How do we speak about this in our churches? And so my message to pastors are, you have to talk about it. There's winsome, graceful ways to do it, but not talking about it, I think, is worse for people who are sitting in the pews, because 1 in 4 congregants have had an abortion or been involved in abortion. So 1 in 4 are sitting there saying, hey, is my sin so big that you can't talk about it, or that no one is bringing this up? And how do I deal with that? I'm sitting there in silence for 17 years thinking, oh my gosh, how can I even be forgiven? It's the most shameful thing. And so we have to bring that out into the light, like we do other things, and heal, and then begin to heal the land, and then go on and then go and love people and change the culture to making abortion unthinkable and unnecessary, because unnecessary is that continuum of care, because we're now helping you in the situation. We're coming alongside you, and we're going to help you through that. And so it's no longer necessary in your mind. And so we're excited about where the pro-life movement is going, and really good legislation. Human Coalition is one of the only the only one I know of a pro-life national organization that works at both the service level and the advocacy, and we have to be involved in both. It's important that, you know, that we get good laws that really move the needle for clients, not to just make a lot of laws that don't get implemented or actually executed, but how do we make good laws that actually impact the clients in a way that makes abortion unnecessary and unthinkable. So that's where we're really proud of the work Chelsea and her team have been doing on legislation like the Heartbeat Act, one that she helped write here with another one of our colleagues called Every Mother Matters Act that was passed in Arkansas. These are these are impactful legislation that is making a difference. And so we're excited about that.
I want to point out we have just under 10 minutes left, and if you have questions, you can put them in the chat function, and we'll incorporate that. I'll incorporate that into the conversation. Chelsea, could you talk a little bit about the legislative angle? In particular, I know there's been a lot of controversy and focus on some of the trigger mechanisms in the Texas law. My understanding is there's also allocations for funding for alternatives for women that we haven't heard as much about. And can you also talk about the All Mothers Matter legislation, which was not passed in Texas, but is an integral part of the Heartbeat strategy, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, we think of abortion in terms of supply and demand. You know, we're serving women and we understand why they're seeking abortion, the demand side of the equation. And you also want to, of course, limit the supply of abortion. So the Heartbeat Act limits the abortion. It just regulates abortion. That's what it does. But at the same time, Texas has spent decades building an infrastructure for this state to be an abortion-free state. That type of infrastructure includes things like $100 million in an alternatives to abortion program that serves pregnant women. We work in that program and are so grateful and proud of that work. They expanded Medicaid for postpartum care for women in the last few weeks even. And then they have Healthy Texas Women's Program. So those are the public programs available. But all of that builds this infrastructure to enable women as a society to have less of a demand for abortion. So those are some of the ways we can do that. And then the Every Other Mother Matters Act, for me, is the whole solution almost for the demand side, because that is a bill that says before any woman obtains an abortion, any woman seeking an abortion goes to her abortion provider, she calls a group like ours and receives an offer of help. It's just an offer. It's an offer of assistance, resources, whatever you need, so that 76% of women who would prefer to parent can raise the flag on the issues they have and allow us to come alongside them and serve them. And so that's the Every Mother Matters Act. It was passed in Arkansas, almost passed in Texas. We ran out of time on the House side, but we do anticipate a victory there soon. And we'd love both of these. Both of these have to work together. We have to serve women and be a society that is pro-life, but also say we're going to do the moral priority, which is alleviate abortion from our midst.
And conservatives need to be a little less afraid, I think, to talk about using the mechanisms of government to help make this situation better, because the fact of the matter is the government's going to spend money on things. So let's it help families.
And I think having policies that are pro-family and infrastructure that are pro-family, I mean, things like tax credits for families who are having children. I mean, there's a way for the social state to actually enable the things we care about as conservatives and Christians. And the other thing I'll add to that is, you know, lately it has been, sometimes the church wants to engage in the serving women side and not the political realm. And then some want to engage in the political realm and not the serving women side. And I just want to encourage everyone, it takes both. We would never have ended slavery if we tried to free one slave at a time without the government side, but really you also need a culture that understands why that was so horrible and horrific. And so I think if you apply that to the abortion context, you've got to have both. You have to have it working in conjunction. And I'm really grateful that our organization has both.
And we really need to recapture a sense that civic involvement, politics, government is noble work for people of character.
We try.
We try. So thank you for the work that you're doing and reminding people of that and that that's possible. Jeff, I saw you were about to talk.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, two things with that. One, we want to encourage people to give to pro-life, because 0.2% of America gives to pro-life, 0.2%. So it is a very underfunded initiative, the life movement in of itself. So I don't think, it's not always the thing you talk about at the dinner parties that, hey, I'm pro-life and I give. It's not always, the most popular thing to do, but it is what we should do as Christians, is to give towards that. And so we want to save lives in any way. And so sometimes people are concerned that, hey, if we're working with the state, does that preclude you from being a Christian organization? And it does not. We navigate that well, but we're rescuing lives, and then we're bringing them into a system of care where we then can bridge them back to their faith community, and that we can share the gospel, that we can be Christian oriented. But so those things can be separate and still do the work that we need to do to rescue more lives. And so we are working in both areas because we feel like God's called us to work in every way possible to rescue as many lives as long as we can. And so we're using all resources and mechanisms to rescue every life that God will give us.
And I have to say, thank you so much for the unifying way you approach this, because as you said, Jeff, sometimes there's, it's an unintentional even kind of turf warfare going on when we're all about the same thing. So let's work together and not worry about, taking other people's funders and let's just combine resources here.
Right.
There's a question here, which you got to a little bit, Jeff, but maybe Chelsea, if you want to emphasize a little bit more, just the practical question for an unmarried expecting mother, how do you help her grow through the pregnancy? Chelsea, do you want to address that a little bit?
Sure. So we operate with what's called a continuum of care program. So a woman enters our clinic and she brings us her needs. She is the driver on this, and she says, I need help, for instance, with a job or childcare, or sometimes it's safe housing in domestic violence situations. And so we have licensed professionals on staff, that's nurses, psychologists, and social workers who come alongside her, and then they just start the path towards stability. We're going to stabilize the circumstances, alleviate those immediate needs so that she can take a deep breath and start planning for a future as a mother, whether that includes adoption. That's always, of course, an option for her. So really it's just coming alongside her, and we'll do that for years. I mean, there's really no limit to what we'll do to save a life. And so we walk her through that process and really try to stabilize her circumstances, including for unmarried women, of course, which I think is the predominant woman walking through our door, she is unmarried.
And that taking a deep breath point is so important, because it really, sometimes all it takes is good morning and sitting down and having a human conversation with someone who believes that this woman, first of all, is already a mother and can continue to be a mother, and who cares enough to continue with her in this process. So we just have a few last minutes. If Jeff, do you want to give us a final word about this moment, and again about the work of the Human Coalition, and then Chelsea, I'll let you wrap it up.
Well, we're grateful and excited about what God's doing in the pro-life movement. I see a movement that is beginning to really coalesce and unite and come together. We feel like God's called us to help lead that movement, to be a catalyst that kind of can help lift all boats and do the things that we do well. But there are organizations across the country that do things extremely well, what they do. And so how do we all come together into one body so that there's a hand and a foot and and all the bodies of Christ and all the bodies of the movement coming together. So we're extremely encouraged by that. We're extremely encouraged by some of the legislation coming down. It's going to be a fight. There's no doubt that there's a lot ahead of us. And so I would encourage our listeners to continue to pray, to get involved, and to give, and to give and where they're at, and to help other pro-life organizations across the country, because I do feel like there is a moment. I feel like the same way Wilberforce looked at ending slavery, no one thought that could be done. and yet in his lifetime turned over the slave trade. And we think of slavery as unthinkable today. And so that same, I believe God's called us for this moment to do that same work. And we need people to really stand up, to get involved and to pray and do everything that we can to help end abortion. And I believe it can be done in this lifetime.
And also to be creative about the way we communicate. I think when you were talking about how at a dinner party, it's not the first thing you bring up that you donate to the Human Coalition, but we could talk about how we donate to a women's care center. We don't have to use the word abortion in the first part of the conversation, right? A ministry that helps women. and then, you walk alongside people who don't agree with us and help them understand once they appreciate, oh, you seem to be a decent person, Jeff. You don't have to start with the abortion word.
Well, everybody can agree on the continuum of care and stepping in and helping mothers who are in very difficult situations for healthy pregnancies and healthy moms. And, that's a big part of what we do. And that's a big part of what we want to continue to promote. We think that's going to be more and more important as we move towards what we hope is a post-Roe world.
And pro-life people, as you point out, need to be thinking about foster care and adoption. There should be no children in foster care in America. If we're pro-life people.
There is no doubt. We work with Lifeline Pregnancy, our adoption agency. They do a fantastic job. And so because of continuum of care, we're able to send more and more people. They've actually had to staff up because when you walk with a woman, you're building trust. That becomes much more of an option for her. And so we're looking at ways that we can continue to inspire moms to be willing to adopt and give their child for adoption and open adoptions. And so that's a beautiful thing.
It is. Chelsea, final words.
Well, I would just say I'm really hopeful for this moment in history that we're all witnessing and a part of. I'm hopeful for women who are more served and cared for in society than ever. And I'm hopeful for the preborn children that we're going to save because of that. And I just encourage everyone, as Jeff said, the Bible says that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So just become a worker, whatever that means to you in your sphere. Become a worker and, continue to understand who these women are, what their needs are. And then as we as a society, preach the gospel, which is the answer to so much of this.
And Jeff was talking about being the hands and the feet and also the heart. So much we have to be loving in this, and people need to see our joy in the midst of real love to walk with women in difficult circumstances. We don't pretend that it's you press a button and everything is fine. But love, this is what love looks like, doing hard work and working with people and really meeting their needs and listening to them, listening to women instead of telling women what they should be doing. So thank you so much, Chelsea and Jeff, for your work at the Human Coalition, for taking time out at such a busy time. I know it's always busy in the work you do, but in particular with the entire country and world even focused on Texas right now. Thank you for this time. And for anyone listening, thank you so much for being with us. Can I ask you to share this video on YouTube with other people so that we can keep the conversation going and help people understand that this isn't just a political clash. This is about real women and real help on the front lines. And so thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I'm Catherine Lopez from the National Review Institute, and feel free to sign up for my newsletter and you'll find out about future events like this. I'd like to focus on lots of good works in Texas during this period of time where everyone's focused